This is the Mop Up. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you so much for finding me. On today's show, a Florida woman testified before the House Judiciary Committee claiming to be the Attorney General for the United States. Well, actually, it was Pam Bondi, Florida woman. She is, in fact, our United States Attorney General. She is the top prosecutor in our country. Nearly 120,000 federal employees work under her, including all 38,000 over at the FBI. She is the caretaker of our laws, as well as the massive database of files kept on practically every U.S. citizen by the FBI. And one of those citizens was Jeffrey Epstein, who before dying racked up a file over at the FBI containing close to maybe 6 million documents. Those documents, Pam Bondi was ordered to turn over to Congress back in November when Donald Trump signed the Epstein Transparency Act into law. And some people think she has not complied with the Epstein Transparency Act. Some say she's protecting sexual predators, including her boss, the President of the United States. That is why millions around the world tuned in Wednesday to watch with much anticipation as Pam Bondi testified before the House Judiciary Committee, where I think she actually conducted herself with all the dignity befitting a person of her stature. Here she is answering questions from New York House Democrat Dan Goldman, a former federal prosecutor himself.
And let me stop for a minute.
I'm talking.
If they're not privileged,
quiet.
Don't yell at me. If they're not
Mr. Chairman, would you stop the clock? This is on your time. It's not on Mr.
If
Goldman.
they're not
privileged, you used your improper redactions.
You'll like my answer.
Every day, I'm more and more proud of being American. Washington State House Democrat Pramila Jayapal is one of the 44 members of the House Judiciary Committee. Each member of the committee got 5 minutes of questioning.
You're not going to answer this question, so let me just
Chairman,
say this.
I'll direct it to
What
you.
a massive cover-up.
No, I'm answering a question.
Chairman, will you restore her time? The witness is interrupting.
I'm not going to get in the gutter with this woman.
Stop the
She's
time
doing theatrics.
and let me have my
The gentlelady from Washington controls the time. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Yes, that's Jim Jordan. New York House Democrat Jerry Nadler was chairman of the House Judiciary Committee from 2019 to 2023. He's retiring after this year. I'm sure he's very upset. I'm sure he's going to miss this. Congressman Nadler was questioning our Attorney General when the ranking Democrat on the committee, Maryland's Jamie Raskin, intervened after he sensed our Attorney General, Pam Bondi, wasn't answering Congressman Nadler's questions. Watch.
You can let her filibuster all day long, but not on our watch. Not on our time. No way. And I told you about that, Attorney General, before you started.
You don't tell me.
Yeah, I did tell you because we saw what you did in the Senate.
You're a lawyer, not even a lawyer.
Committee will be in order.
Time, and I should get back at least 45 seconds.
We will give you a few more seconds. I said that already.
45 seconds.
Okay.
She called him a washed up lawyer. You're not even a lawyer. That's what she said to former Nader's Raider Jamie Raskin. Well, I think our Attorney General was a little confused when she said that Jamie Raskin is a washed-up lawyer and then said he's not even a lawyer. No. Jamie Raskin graduated magna cum laude from Harvard Law School, where he was editor of the Law Review. Before attending Harvard Law, he graduated from Harvard undergrad. He went on to work for Ralph Nader, then got himself elected to Congress, where despite the incredible workload of being a United States congressperson, and a great one at that, Jamie Raskin also somehow still finds time to teach constitutional law at American University, Washington College of Law. He's been doing that for over 25 years. Madam Attorney General. So he most certainly is a lawyer. I think you made an honest mistake. You confused Jamie Raskin, the ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, with the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan, who in fact is not a lawyer. the Republican chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, who is tasked with oversight of the Justice Department's $45 billion annual budget, who holds hearings to make sure the FBI and the prosecutors are enforcing the law but not weaponizing it. Jim Jordan is not a lawyer. I must have mentioned this 1,000 times on my show. He wanted to be a lawyer, but he couldn't pass the bar exam. This is from the Daily Beast last year. CNN host fact-checked after calling MAGA rep an attorney. She called Jim Jordan an attorney. He wanted to be an attorney, but he went to law school, but he couldn't pass the bar. I've been telling you this for 5 years. This is from the Daily Beast. Katie Francis wrote this back on October 12th, 2025. So Jim Jordan, chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, was on the Sunday show with Dana Bash. This is from Katie Francis's piece in the Daily Beast. At one point, Bash asked Jordan to put his attorney cap on and consider whether the president's actions were actually working to undermine the importance of the DOJ. And while Jordan was happy to take on the attorney role, viewers at home were quick to point out that he had no right to. While Jordan attended Capital University in Columbus, Ohio, he never sat for the bar exam to become a licensed attorney. That's his story. Okay? You know, I never took the bar exam. Sure you didn't. That's why people go to law school, so you don't have to practice law. Jordan claims he never took the bar. I heard he did, but couldn't pass it. His story is he didn't want to take the bar exam because he didn't want to be a lawyer. Yeah, he just wanted to be chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. This is why people join the Republican Party. There's so much room for advancement if you're an idiot, like Jim Jordan. Can you imagine the Democratic Party installing an idiot, an imbecile like Jim Jordan, who couldn't pass the bar? Could you imagine the Democrats picking someone like Jim Jordan to be chairman of the House Judiciary Committee? In the Republican Party, if you're a stupid white man, you go straight to the front of the line. Yes, I'm talking to you, Defense Chief Pete Hegseth. Anyway, Jamie Raskin is most likely going to serve as chairman of the House Judiciary Committee should the Democrats win back the House. And that's not going to be good for Pam Bondi, Florida woman. Here is ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin, warning the Attorney General to answer questions and don't insult. These were his opening remarks.
Please do not waste 1 second of our precious time by evading questions, by changing the subject, or engaging in personal attacks against members of Congress. We saw your performance in the Senate, and we're not going to accept that. This isn't a game. In the Senate, you brought something with you called a burn book, a binder of smears to attack members personally for doing the people's work of oversight. Please set the burn book aside and answer our questions. And when you hear us reclaim our time, that means it's time for you to stop speaking.
A burn book. What is a burn book? The attorney that you're looking at it, the Attorney General shows up to a House or Senate Oversight Committee hearing with what the White House calls a burn book, as in here are some burns to throw at your inquisitors. You know, insults, burns, what a burn, what a cut. Donald Trump puts a diaper around his butt. Okay, the Attorney General shows up to the House Oversight Committee with what the White House calls their burn book. Okay? There it is, right there. That's her burn book. and she's lifting up her finger. She's saying, hang on, let me check my burn book before answering that. You know, it's not really a book of insults. If it were, it would be fun. It's not like she gets a question from House Democrat Jared Moskowitz from Florida, and her answer is, it's so sweet that your mother still cuts your hair. You know, something like that. No, this is a book that contains embarrassing information about each of the Democrats asking her difficult questions. She's the Attorney General of the United States, which means the FBI answers to her. Her burn book isn't a book of insults. It's a cudgel, a threat. It's the chief law enforcer saying, I can prosecute you. I need not remind all of you that former Fox News contributor turned Washington, D.C. attorney Jeanine Pirro took 6 members of Congress before a grand jury to try to indict these former military intelligence officers for cutting a public service message reminding members of our armed services it's against the law to follow an illegal order. On Tuesday, a grand jury failed to indict. Pam Bondi tried to get these 6 Democratic Congress people indicted. Senator Mark Kelly, Senator Elisa Slotkin, Representative Jason Crow, Representative Maggie Goodlander, Representative Chrissy Houlihan, and Representative Chris Deluzio. All right? They tried to indict members of Congress, okay? For cutting a public service message reminding our soldiers don't obey illegal orders. California Senator Adam Schiff is being investigated by Pam Bondi for mortgage fraud. And Eric Swalwell, the California House Democrat who sits on the Judiciary Committee and asked some questions I'm going to show you later, he too is being investigated by Pam Bondi for mortgage fraud. So that burn book you see there, it's to intimidate. Throughout the hearings, while Democrats asked questions, Bondi would thumb through her burn book looking for little tidbits to throw at her inquisitors instead of answering the question. Now remember, this is the top prosecutor who is in charge of the FBI. She is the keeper of our secrets because the FBI has a file on everyone. After Wednesday's hearings, Jamie Raskin, the ranking Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, told the Associated Press that Bondi is running a vendetta factory out of the Justice Department, keeping tabs on all of Trump's imaginary enemies. Well, he has some real enemies, too. But calling it a vendetta factory, I think, is putting it politely. As I said, Pam Bondi runs the FBI. Kash Patel, the director of the FBI, answers to Pam Bondi. You're looking at Lavrentiy Beria. He ran Stalin's secret police. Stalin used to call him the Soviet Union's Himmler, okay? And that's a picture of Lavrentiy Beria. I hope that's his daughter sitting on his lap, but he was a predator, big time. In fact, Stalin told his daughters to stay away from Lavrentiy Beria. He ran Stalin's secret police. He had a file on everyone. He was the Soviet Union's J. Edgar Hoover. He ran the gulags. Even Stalin was terrified of Beria. And there's Stalin going through documents that Beria has delivered. So that's how powerful the keeper of a nation's secrets can be. Himmler, Beria, Hoover, Pam Bondi, and her little white book, the burn book. That's why she showed up with her burn book. That's why she kept referring to it openly. She wasn't ashamed. I'm going to show you some clips. Instead of answering questions, Bondi proudly pulled chestnuts from her burn book to accuse the Democrat asking questions that she didn't like. She would accuse them of being soft on crime, street crime, not corporate crime. And she would accuse a Democratic congressperson of not knowing the name of a black, it was always a black, Hispanic, or Muslim murderer from their district that she didn't know, that she would accuse the congressperson, the Democrat, of not knowing about. She'd ask some members why they've chosen not to run. It was a rhetorical question, or at least she posed it as a rhetorical question. Why aren't you running for re-election? Implying she knows, in my burn book, I know the scandal. I know why you're not running for re-election. So let me show you what it was like. This is how authoritarian regimes bend the legislative branch to their knees. Either get dirt on them or pretend you have dirt on them. This is Rebecca Balin. She is the House Democrat from Vermont. Here she is asking the Attorney General about Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick showing up in the Epstein files. We all know that Howard Lutnick visited Epstein's island. He had drinks with Epstein, despite Lutnick promising the American people he had severed all ties with Epstein. We did a whole show on that. So watch as Pam Bondi thumbs through her burn book, okay, to intimidate this member of Congress.
By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? Why are you not asking these questions? And I know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell.
So she's going through the burn book. Let's see what I have on you. You keep talking, Missy, and I wonder what I'm going to expose about you. So I'm going to show you, if I can find it. This isn't, okay. Where am I? All right. Okay, so she went through the burn book. You saw that. And instead of answering the questions, right, America's Laventry Beria, Pam Bondi, pulled up Congressman Balin's files and commented that she never asked Merrick Garland the same exact questions. Well, the Congresswoman said, well, that's weak sauce. What else you got on me? You have to find something in the burn book better than that. So the burn book was out in the open. Everybody knew she was just looking for what kind of dirt she was going to spray on the committee. Watch how it got so heated, C-SPAN literally turned it off. Watch this.
When he was
Weak sauce.
And
Weak sauce.
also, I want the record to reflect that, with this anti-Semitic culture right now, she voted against a resolution condemning.
Oh,
He is
Jewish.
Jewish.
I
just wanna be clear.
Do you want to go there, Attorney General? Or do you want to go there? Are you serious? Talking about anti-Semitism to a woman who lost her grandfather in the Holocaust?
my time. I reclaim my time.
Really?
The committee will be in order.
We are going to
C-SPAN it was too much for C-SPAN. I was flipping around. Look, Congress's job is to perform oversight. During hearings like this, it is the job of the Attorney General to sit there and answer questions, not ask questions. Answer them. But watch as she tries to menace the Congresswoman from Vermont.
Who is Chris Malin?
Was the president aware? Please stop talking. It is not your time to ask questions. It is not your time. I'm reclaiming my time, Mr. Chair.
One second.
Time belongs to the gentlelady from Vermont.
Was the president aware of Secretary Lutnick's ties to Epstein when he chose him to lead the Department of Commerce? Was he aware?
Chris Malin was a Border Patrol agent.
Okay, so I'm going to conclude that the president, in fact, did know about his ties because he was the next door neighbor.
Shame on you.
Oh, for goodness sakes.
You're
this
from
is
a tiny,
pathetic.
beautiful
This is
state.
pathetic, Mr.
Committee will
Chair.
be in order.
I am not asking trick questions here. The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration.
So let me tell you what's going on here. The Republicans try to present themselves as law and order, and they're not. They're big on corporate crime. You got Epstein victims in the room that Pam Bondi won't apologize to. She won't turn over the files. She's protecting rich and powerful men. Republicans love street cops who go after minorities. They don't like the Capitol Police. They won't even put the placard up honoring them in the Capitol. They claim to love the police because police protect property and have a history of racism, the slave patrols. But Pam Bondi, who is the top police officer in our country, she's weak on crime. She's soft on crime, like not prosecuting child predators, all the co-conspirators that Jeffrey Epstein associated with. So she brings up, and she was doing this throughout her testimony, she would look through her burn book and find a way to embarrass a member of Congress. Well, Congresswoman Balin is from Vermont, and Pam Bondi goes, who's Chris Malin? Who's Chris Malin? I'm going to show you that you're soft on crime. I'm not soft on crime. I don't care about these Epstein victims. You can pretend that I'm soft on crime, but I care about Chris Malin, a Border Patrol officer who sadly was killed in the line of duty in Vermont last year. It's very sad. Bondi politicized his death in order to suggest that this Congresswoman Balin cared more about the Epstein victims than she did a border agent from her own state of Vermont who was killed in the line of duty. So the message Pam Bondi pulled from her burn book is, you should be more concerned about the border and less concerned about the Epstein victims. You should be more concerned about the safety of our brave Border Patrol officers who you demonize, but these are men and women who put their lives on the line every day. Now, what's going on right now is the funding bill for the Department of Homeland Security expires early Saturday morning, and it's over civil liberty guardrails. Democrats want Border Patrol and ICE agents to take off their masks, to wear identifiable badge numbers so we know who they are, and to wear body cams, and to obey all the requirements that every other law enforcement officer in this country has to. And the Republicans say, no, we don't want to endanger the lives of ICE agents. We don't want to endanger the lives of Border Patrol officers. When you call, we keep hearing this, when you call Border Patrol officers and ICE agents the Gestapo, Nazis, fascists, it endangers their lives. So I have prepared an entire show on how dangerous it is to be a border agent or an ICE agent. I haven't had time, but I do not want to trivialize the death of Chris Malin, whose death Pam Bondi politicized on Wednesday. He is The reason she's mentioning him is he is the first Border Patrol officer to be shot to death in the line of duty since 2010. That happened last year. Very tragic. Let me repeat. Chris Mayland is the first Border Patrol officer to be shot to death in the line of duty since 2010. Border agents, statistically, thank God, never get shot to death. The odds are infinitesimal. What about ICE agents? You got your Border Patrol officers and you got your ICE agents. The last ICE agent to get shot to death here in the United States was back in, would you like to guess? 2005. That would be 21 years ago. The last, let me repeat. God, I get so angry. And I don't want anybody to hurt a Border Patrol officer or an ICE agent. But the Republicans, Donald Trump, Pam Bondi, they paint the job like they're the Wallendas. Their lives are in danger. It is one of the safest law enforcement jobs you can have in the United States. Other law enforcement officers, they body cams, identifiable numbers on their uniforms, no masks. But we have to keep ICE and border agents safe because it's the most dangerous job in America. It's not. Let me repeat. Border agents statistically never get shot. ICE agents never get shot. Statistically. Again, the last ICE, and this is tragic, and I don't want anything bad to happen to a border agent or an ICE agent. But the last ICE agent to get shot to death here in the United States was in 2005. Not only that, he wasn't even shot in the line of duty. It's sad, I feel terrible, but he was shot to death by an American citizen, not an immigrant. ICE agent shot to death by an American citizen. This ICE agent was doing construction work on his own home. He was building himself a home for his family, and he was killed by an American citizen, a fugitive who broke out of jail in Atlanta, Georgia. Some of you who live in Georgia might remember this. The entire city was in lockdown as a massive manhunt was taking place for this fugitive. All hands on deck. But this ICE agent was working on his home. He was doing construction. He wasn't looking for the fugitive. And somehow the fugitive came across him. And the ICE agent knew this guy isn't kosher, and he identified himself as a federal officer and was shot to death. Very tragic. But, I mean, it's heartbreaking, but he is the last ICE agent to get shot to death here in the United States. That was 2005. He was shot to death by an American, and it wasn't in the line of duty. He was killed by an American citizen who escaped from jail. Again, a tragedy. But I'm getting tired of hearing about how dangerous it is to be a Border Patrol officer or an ICE agent, and because it's so dangerous, we must abdicate all our civil liberties. I ain't going for it. It's a lie. And I'm just stunned that nobody knows this. As I always say, Google it, AI it. It's pretty amazing that nobody talks about this, that the last ICE agent to be shot to death in America was in 2005. How is that not part of the conversation? Especially now, when we're funding the Department of Homeland Security. So this, I like to back things up with cold hard facts. So this is what I prepared an entire episode on how safe it is to be an ICE or Border Patrol officer compared to other law enforcement. This was written by Alex Norwista from the Cato Institute. Cato Institute, right-wing libertarian think tank funded by the Koch brothers. Okay? This was written a year before Chris Mayland was shot to death. He is the border patrol officer whose death Pam Bondi was politicizing. First Border Patrol officer killed since 2010. Before Chris Mayland, a Border Patrol officer hadn't been shot to death since 2010. Again, an ICE agent has not been shot to death since 2005. And I hope it stays that way. I don't want anybody getting hurt, okay? This is from Alex Norwista from the Cato Institute. And it was written it was written in 2024, a year before Chris Mayland was killed. The government and the Officer Down Memorial page record all Border Patrol agent and Customs officer deaths in the line of duty. I analyzed the deaths from January 1st, 2003 through December 31st, 2023, and I excluded Customs officers because where were they? They're at ports and airports going through merchandise. So that, he writes, that left 58 Border Patrol agents who died while on the job. The deadliest year for border agents was 2021, when 15 agents died, or one Border Patrol death for every 1,302 agents in that year. Of those 15 deaths, what do you think it was? 13 died from COVID-19 and 2 from car or vehicle accidents. Now, sometimes ICE agents and Border Patrol officers die. They have heart attacks in the line of duty. They will crash their car in the line of duty. But being killed by an immigrant, I don't know when the last ICE agent was killed by an immigrant. 2005, we had an ICE agent shot to death, but it was by an American citizen. We're debating the Homeland Security funding bill. You would think when Republicans say they have to wear masks, it's the most dangerous job in America. It's more dangerous to be a plumber, especially if you're Donald Trump's plumber. God, I pity that person. Okay, I digressed. So, the Burn Book. Let's go back to the Burn Book. I love Jared Moskowitz. He's from Florida. And here he is mocking Pam Bondi's Burn Book. If you saw, the Democrats were pretty great. They just called her out on the Burn Book. Here's Jared, the great Jared Moskowitz.
Now, Madam Attorney General, I have like 25 seconds left. So because I'm curious, and I'd like to see you flip to the Jared Moskowitz section of the binder. I'm interested to see what staff provided on the oppo on me, and because we're in the Olympics, I'm going to give it a grade. I just want to see how good it is. So give me your best one.
So first of all, nothing is funny about mocking the Bible and holding up a Trump Bible. That's what you did. You made a joke, and I find offense to that. That's all I have to say.
I want it from the Burn Book.
Shame.
I want it from the Burn Book. Which is the best one? What you got?
Has expired. The gentleman from Wisconsin is recognized.
So she is upset because Jared Moskowitz, before asking that question, mentioned the Trump Bible. This is what charlatans do. They wear the Bible on their sleeves. So here's the joke that Pam Bondi found so offensive about the Bible. He was making a joke about the Trump Bible, the Lee Greenwood, Donald Trump, God Bless America Bible, which was made in China. But Trump and Greenwood lied and said it was made in the United States. They sold it for $60 here in the United States, and it cost something like $3.50 to get it printed in China. And all the people who hate China, bought the book thinking it was made in America. I mean, it's just perfect. It combines the two last refuges of scoundrels, the Bible and patriotism, the God bless the USA Bible, and the slap in the face to the MAGA morons is it's printed in China. It's like they know they go out of their way to screw their own people. Okay, here's the joke Jared Moskowitz made that offended our Attorney General.
Kash Patel under oath said Trump's name appears less than 100 times in the files. We now know that's not true. Trump's name appears more times in the Epstein files than God's name appears in the book about God. Okay, by the way, this is the Trump Bible. Move over, King James.
She was offended by that. Not move over King James. It is the King James Bible. They just put Trump's name on it, but it is the King James Bible. Well, he said Trump's name is mentioned more times in the Epstein files than God's name is mentioned in the King James Bible. And Trump's name is mentioned a lot, even though Kash Patel testified it wasn't. Here is Texas House Democrat, the great Jasmine Crockett.
Fact number one, Donald Trump is one of the most named people in the Epstein files. At least 5,000 files contains more than 38,000 references to Trump, his wife, or Mar-a-Lago. Fact number two, Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell made young girls available to Trump on multiple occasions. For example, according to this file, Ghislaine Maxwell presented a young girl to President Trump who spent more than 20 minutes apparently flirting with her. Here's another example. This shows notes from FBI investigators that describe Jeffrey Epstein transporting a victim to Mar-a-Lago to meet with President Trump, where he bragged to Trump that, quote, "This is a good one."
When you tell Pam Bondi about the Epstein victims, the expression on her face, you might as well be talking about your 98-year-old sick aunt. Again, it's like, I got to hear about your sick 98-year-old aunt again. Can't we just have drinks? That's the expression on Pam Bondi's face. I am so bored hearing about your aunt. Well, besides the Byrne book, there are other tools in Pam Bondi's belt. Of course, there are ad hominem attacks, like calling Jamie Raskin a washed-up loser. She called Thomas Massie, who co-authored the Epstein Transparency Bill, she called him a failed politician because he stands up to Trump. And of course, there's the pivot, the rhetorical pivot. It's what Don Draper used to tell everybody on Mad Men. If you're in trouble, if you don't like the topic, if your back is against the wall, change the conversation. Remember on Mad Men, Lucky Strikes causes cancer. Can't talk about that. It's toasted. Remember that scene? It's great. It's a great scene. It's toasted. Just tell people it's toasted. What about the cancer? No, we're not going to talk about cancer. It's toasted. The leaves are toasted. If you're in trouble, pivot. So when Pam Bondi testifies before the Senate Judiciary Committee or the House Judiciary Committee, like back in October when she testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee, it was just as disgraceful. Senate Democrat from Rhode Island, Sheldon Whitehouse, sits on the Senate Judiciary Committee, and he said Bondi just spewed nonsense to avoid answering any uncomfortable question. Now, I don't know. I don't remember because it was back in October. I think it was maybe the BBC or the New York Times who accused Bondi back then of resorting to an illogical fallacy that's called, and believe me, I don't know. I'm not smart enough, but I remembered this, and I'm going to massacre the Latin. It's the tu quoque fallacy, okay? Again, I'm pretending to be a lot smarter than I am, and it's a illogical fallacy. The way it works is your argument doesn't hold any water because you yourself are a hypocrite. That's the tu leave a comment. I'm mispronouncing this. Okay. So, for example, let me show you this illogical fantasy. When Bondi was testifying before the Senate Judiciary Committee in October, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse wanted to know about the FBI sting operation where Tom Homan, our border czar, back in 2024 when Biden was president, got caught on tape taking $50,000 from an undercover agent, an FBI agent, posing as a Homeland Security contractor who was looking to get a meeting with Trump if Trump gets elected president. And he handed Tom Homan a paper bag filled with $50,000 in cash. Well, Sheldon Whitehouse asked what I asked. First question. Because they say the Justice Department under Trump, when they found out about it, put an end to it and he was cleared. And I said, did Homan keep the money? Did he report it on his taxes? Did the FBI get it back? And that's what Sheldon Whitehouse asked. And instead of answering a legitimate question, Pam Bondi demanded to know why Sheldon Whitehouse took campaign donations from Reid Hoffman. So that's the logical fallacy, that if you're a hypocrite, you're not allowed to ask any embarrassing questions. Sheldon Whitehouse did not take money from Reid Hoffman, who is the wealthy tech billionaire. He visited Epstein on Pedo Island and has apologized. But that is again, leave a comment, the two-cocaine logical fallacy. You can't call Tom Homan corrupt because you're corrupt, even though you're not. I just make shit up. I'm Pam Bondi. And if I say you took a donation from Reid Hoffman, this is the Attorney General of the United States. She went to law school. This kind of syllogism, these kind of arguments would never hold water in a fourth grade debate class. Certainly not law school. But Bondi gets away with it testifying before the Judiciary Committee on Wednesday because she's performing for one person, Donald Trump. The other pivot away from answering questions about the Epstein files is, as Don Draper says in Mad Men, change the subject. Talk about how great Trump is doing. And that's what she did. The problem is the hearings were about how badly Trump bungled the Epstein files, how badly the Trump Justice Department bungled the Epstein files. That's what oversight is. That's what checks and balances is. And Bondi, when she was asked a difficult question, boasted that the murder rate in America now is the lowest it's been since 1900, which seems to be true, but Trump had nothing to do with that. Murder and crime is at a secular low. It's been just going down, down, down for decades. But yet Trump got elected telling us it's not safe to go outside. She's bragging border crossings that are an all-time low. Well, they were going down when Biden was president. That's a seasonal problem that has little to do with law enforcement. Study after study shows the United States cannot affect the number of people coming and going across the border. It's seasonal, has to do with climate change, which we can control, but we won't. It's about Latin American economies. It's about propping up Latin American dictators. It has nothing to do with law enforcement. Study after study shows that. Well, we're now at the lowest number of border crossings since the 70s. And it started under Biden. But Donald Trump got elected telling us there's an invasion of 20 million Latin American terrorists. And we're spending, no money for socialized medicine, but billions and billions and billions for detention centers. Why do we need it? We're debating the Homeland Security bill right now. Why do we need ICE if border crossings are at an all-time low? If the murder rate is at an all-time low, why do we need to be pumping billions into ICE? Well, that's what you do when you got a stupid country like the United States. Where am I? Hang on, I'm falling apart here. This is a stupid country that doesn't read, that doesn't pay attention, that doesn't follow what's going on in the House of Representatives. You can be lied to very easily. They've shaped this country. They've made it very easy to lie to us because all of our money goes into the military. And we have to have imaginary enemies to justify spending at least $1 trillion a year on weapons for imaginary enemies. So once you convince Americans that we need to spend $1 trillion on imaginary enemies, you can convince them of anything. They've been working at this for at least a century. Bernays. It's anyway. Where am I? I'm talking too much. Where am I? I should stop. I watched those hearings and I was filled with nothing but love. So here is Pam Bondi doing the rhetorical pivot, making a fool of herself, literally saying, with Epstein's victims in the room, we shouldn't be focusing on Epstein's crimes. We should be celebrating the economy. What economy that we should be celebrating? 90% of Americans, 90% say inflation has reached crisis levels. How do you defend this economy? Pam Bondi talked about the stock market hitting record highs. How tone deaf can you possibly be talking about the stock market as though the stock market has anything to do with the economy or how ordinary Americans are doing? Here she is, the rhetorical pivot.
The Dow is over 50,000 right now. The S&P at almost 7,000. And the NASDAQ smashing records. Americans' 401ks and retirement savings are booming. That's what we should be talking about. We should be talking about making Americans safe. We should be talking about, what does a Dow have to do with anything? That's what they just asked. Are you kidding?
Mr. Jordan, Mr. Jordan.
Committee will be in order.
Mr. Jordan, am I going to get an extra 45 seconds added to my time?
The committee will be in order. The time belongs to the gentleman from Texas.
So you've got Epstein's victims in the room. And she's saying, we should be talking about how great the stock market is doing. I mean, I hope Americans saw this. I know we're a stupid country, but I mean, are we that stupid not to be appalled by this monster? The economy. Well, even an idiot like Nikki Haley, who ran for president in 2024, and she is one of the dumbest people. She's so stupid she could get the Republican nomination in 2028. That's how stupid Nikki Haley is, and I mean stupid. But she's, over at the Hudson Institute, and they're pumping her filled with talking points. The night before Pam Bondi testified, Tuesday, Nikki Haley appeared on Fox News to tell Trump the economy is in piss-poor shape and that he's got to stop talking about how great the stock market is. Here's the idiot Nikki Haley.
You can't look at the stock market and say the economy is doing well.
That's right. Go on, idiot Nikki Haley.
There has not been enough focus on the affordability issue for Americans. You still have too many kids living at home. You still have people who can't deal with rent. You see people, they have less money in their wallets.
Boy, are you stupid. But even she knows more than Pam Bondi, our Attorney General. Well, let's hear from somebody Let's hear from a god, Bernie Sanders. And you know what? If you don't love Bernie Sanders, go F yourself. Here's Bernie Sanders the night before Pam Bondi's testimony. Here is Bernie Sanders talking about how Trump is trying to convince Americans that the economy is red hot. Here is Bernie Sanders.
You wonder whether Trump is completely crazy and delusional or just a pathological liar. But the idea that anybody would believe that this is a great economy when 60% of our people are living paycheck to paycheck, when the cost of the health care is going up, people can't afford housing, people can't afford their basic groceries, childcare system is dysfunctional, people can't afford to go to college. And if this is the greatest economy in the history of the world, God help us.
Bernie help us. Really, if you don't love Bernie Sanders, go. Is his name in the Epstein files? No. Rob Weissman, another great man. Rob Weissman is a great man. He's president of Public Citizen. They are the people's lobbyist. Public Citizen was founded by Ralph Nader, so the American citizen would have lobbyists in Washington, D.C., not just the oil companies. That was Ralph Nader's idea. What if we had lobbyists walking around the Capitol advocating on behalf of the American people and not just oil companies? So if you have money to give, you give to Public Citizen, publiccitizen.org. Go to publiccitizen.org, sign up for their newsletters, read what they're doing. Practically every major lawsuit filed against the Trump administration this year and last year either involves the ACLU, Public Citizen, or both. They lobby for you. They lobby for democracy. So Weissman is going to be on the Ralph Nader Radio Hour this weekend, which everybody should listen to. You can listen to it as a podcast, the Ralph Nader Radio Hour. And he testified before Congress this week. And he listed all the ways our Department of Justice right now has abdicated its responsibility in prosecuting corporate crime. This DOJ doesn't prosecute corporate crime. It just celebrates local police officers who crack the skulls of poor people. So while Pam Bondi is celebrating the Dow hitting new levels, Rob Weissman, the president of Public Citizen, says she's disbanding all the departments inside the Justice Department that protect investors and consumers from predatory lenders and corporations. In other words, she's talking about how high the stock market is going, but she's not protecting investors. Investors are getting ripped off. During his testimony before Congress this week, Rob Weissman, the president of Public Citizen, talked about how Pam Bondi authorized an internal memo ordering the Department of Justice to end what she calls regulation through prosecution. She says when we prosecute corporations, it's another form of regulation. It's just more red tape for corporations. So under the Trump Justice Department, corporations are not being prosecuted. He lists in his testimony the number of cryptocurrency traders who got pardoned last year by Trump and who then returned the favor by pouring money into World Liberty Financial. That's a cryptocurrency trading company Trump and his children own nearly 40% of. Steve Witkoff, the guy, our peace ambassador, his kids own the other half. Steve Witkoff, who's traveling around meeting with Putin and Zelensky and trying to settle Gaza, his kids, his brilliant kids, teamed up with Donald Trump's brilliant kids to create this company, World Liberty Financial. It's a cryptocurrency trading company. And Weissman testified that Bondi's Department of Justice, for some reason, disbanded its cryptocurrency enforcement team last year, just as Donald Trump was going into the cryptocurrency business. Well, it must be just a coincidence. The federal government, the Justice Department under Pam Bondi, is no longer prosecuting scam artists like Sam Bankman, who sold worthless cryptocurrency to unsuspecting rubes. Trump also has a meme coin, and so does Melania. And the company who put those meme coins together are being sued in civil court for what they call pumping and dumping the cryptocurrencies. You have to sue them in civil court because the DOJ disbanded its cryptocurrency enforcement department. So they're not going to criminal court. I mention this because Democrat Joe Neguse represents Colorado's 2nd Congressional District. He also sits on the House Judiciary Committee. So watch as he tries to ask a legitimate question of our top law enforcement official, Pam Bondi. It's a simple question. Why did you disband the cryptocurrency enforcement team?
General does not want to answer the question because you eliminated the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team last year. So I understand why you don't want to tell the American people who works there.
Yeah, I understand why you don't want to talk about Mohammed Solomon in your district.
In any event,
who murdered people.
Mr. Chairman, will you stop the clock so his time is not wasted by the witness?
Very generous with allowing.
So, right? She's not going to answer the question about the cryptocurrency team being disbanded or Donald Trump getting donations or getting money into his cryptocurrency from people he pardoned, because that's not an important question. The question is why Joe Neguse doesn't know about some guy named Muhammad who committed a horrible crime in his congressional district. I mean, does that work? Are Americans that stupid that they think Pam Bondi is doing a good job testifying? So again, Congressman asks about disbanding the cryptocurrency enforcement team, and then Bondi checks her burn book. And here is Congressman Neguse telling us why the Attorney General won't answer his question. Watch as she pores over her burn book. She's not going to answer a legitimate question. Instead, she's just looking for things in her book to embarrass the congressman.
Asked, Mr. Chairman, are not trick questions. They're not gotcha questions. They're actually basic questions about how the Department of Justice functions and the unwillingness of this Attorney General to answer them in good faith. When a member of Congress asks how many people work at the National Cryptocurrency Enforcement Team and the Attorney General refuses to answer it, it is not a coincidence. It's because she eliminated the team. Why? Because her boss, the President of the United States, is making money hand over fist, $1.4 billion over the course of the last year through cryptocurrency holdings. I think what is happening at the Department of Justice is a disgrace, Mr. Chairman, and I would urge you to gain control of this hearing. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
I rewind that and watch. She literally licks her finger to turn the page on the burn book. She is so stupid. I mean, she's using it to intimidate. I understand that. It's like I have files on you, but to just read it and not know it, she's stupid. You have to be stupid to be Donald Trump's Attorney General. The New York Times reporting police, and this is how things are different overseas. They're reacting differently to the Epstein files. The New York Times, out with a story that police in Great Britain are now consulting with prosecutors about bringing charges against Andrew Mountbatten, formerly Prince Andrew. He's accused of violating the State Secrets Act when he shared top secret memos with Jeffrey Epstein. Andrew was a trade ambassador, And according to reports, there are emails in the Epstein files where Andrew forwards top secret memos he received as trade ambassador, memos alerting now Epstein to investment opportunities in war-torn Afghanistan, Helmand province. Britain was going to pour money into Helmand province to rebuild it, and if the government's pumping money into Afghanistan, Andrew was alerting Jeffrey Epstein, this is a business opportunity. Well, he violated state secrets, and that's life in prison. There are also new reports that Andrew may have participated in orgies with Jeffrey Epstein. Those orgies involve strippers down in Palm Beach, Florida, as well as 14-year-old girls. There are also reports in the Epstein files. Those orgies were attended by Donald Trump. Could it be? Here is California House Democrat Ted Lieu asking about these orgies. Now, Ted Lieu, this is serious stuff. And Ted Lieu is he's been on this show. His chief of staff, Mark Savasco, used to come on all the time and teach us civics. A lot of what I know about Washington, D.C. is because of Mark Savasco, Ted Lieu's chief of staff, and, of course, Howie Klein, who loved Ted Lieu. Howie Klein loved to the core of his very being. I don't know. I mean, Alan Grace, but Alan isn't serving in Congress. I don't think Howie Klein loved anybody in Congress as much as he loved Ted Lieu. I had Ted on when he was in the California state legislature. He introduced legislation that got passed that banned gay reparation or gay repairment therapy, Project Exodus, where you pray away the gay. He passed the legislation that banned it in California. We had him on the show. He's a great man, and so is Mark Savasco. I miss him. Okay, and I miss Howie Klein. Here is the great Ted Lieu asking about the orgies with Prince Andrew and the accusations from minors about Donald Trump.
Former Prince Andrew, Donald Trump attended various parties with Jeffrey Epstein. I want to know, were there any underage girls at that party or at any party that Trump attended with Jeffrey Epstein?
This is so ridiculous, and that they are trying to deflect from all the great things Donald Trump has done. There is no evidence that Donald Trump has committed a crime. Everyone knows that. This has been the most transparent presidency. He's the one that asked that those files.
I'm reclaiming my time. I got your answer. You said there's no evidence.
Trump asked
Chairman, please stop the clock.
Stop the clock. The legislation. This is ridiculous.
Time belongs to the gentleman from California.
Okay. I'm going to put up another document from a witness who called the FBI's National Threat Operations Center, because I believe you just lied under oath. There is ample evidence in the Epstein file.
Don't you ever accuse me of a crime.
I believe you just lied under oath, and this is all on videotape. You said there's no evidence of a crime. I'm showing you. Here is a witness statement who called into the FBI's Threat Operations Center. He drove Donald Trump around in a limo. He overheard what Donald Trump said to Jeffrey on his cell phone. He was so angry, he was going to stop a limo and hurt Donald Trump. And he met a girl who said she was raped by Donald Trump and Jeffrey Epstein. She later had her head blown off, and officers at the scene said that could not have been suicide. No one at the Department of Justice interviewed this witness. You need to interview this witness immediately. Epstein should rot in hell, so should the men who patronized his operation. And as we sit here today, there are over 1,000 sex trafficking victims. and you have not held a single man accountable. Shame on you. If you had any decency, you would resign right after this hearing concludes.
The gentleman has expired.
That look on her face, like, do I have to hear about your 98-year-old sick aunt again? Can't we just have lunch? Do you have to be such a downer? This is with victims in the room. 1,000 victims that we know of. Jeffrey Epstein's victims, 1,000. Ted Lieu. So these are dark times, but there are people out there serving who inspire, who are miracles of democracy, and Ted Lieu is one of them. Jamie Raskin. There are most of the Negussi, most of the Pramila Jayapal. You see greatness. If you watched the hearings, there is greatness, there is morality, which is very hard to maintain in politics. There is greatness, and then there's evil. I mean, every religious book I've read tells me Pam Bondi's behavior, Donald Trump's behavior, is the definition of evil. And so is America stupid or evil? Well, he didn't even get 50. He got a plurality of votes. So, okay. Ted Lieu, great man, great man. And Mark Savasco. 1,000 victims, that's the number. 1,000 girls victimized, we think, probably more by Jeffrey Epstein. Some were in the room on Wednesday. Some of the relatives of Virginia Giuffre, who committed suicide. Some of the victims who didn't survive were in the room. There were the survivors, and then there are people who didn't survive Jeffrey Epstein. Here again is Washington State House Democrat Pramila Jayapal.
To the survivors in the room, if you are willing, please stand. And if you are willing, please raise your hands if you have still not been able to meet with this Department of Justice. Please know for the record that every single survivor has raised their hand.
And watch. I mean, this is just evil, evil. Here again is New York House Democrat Dan Goldman. He was a federal prosecutor. Think of your holy book, whatever holy book you swear an oath on. You tell me, and she's wearing a cross around her neck. I guess she needs it, right? She needs to wear a cross because nobody could tell she's a Christian.
Now, would the survivors and victims who are here please stand up one more time? Just by show of hands, how many of you or your loved ones actually have met with the Department of Justice and provided testimony and evidence? None. And of those of you who have not met, which is everyone, how many of you have reached out either individually or through a lawyer or representative to offer to provide testimony and evidence? All of them. And of those of you, all of you who have reached out, how many of you were denied or ignored by the Department of Justice? All of them. And despite the shameful and despicable efforts by Ms. Bondi and her department to intimidate you, how many of you are still willing to speak to the Department of Justice? All of them. Well, Ms. Bondi, it looks like you have some more witnesses to talk to.
Gentleman's time has expired.
And I yield back.
We will go to the good gentleman from North Carolina.
It's just there are no words to describe it. Here again is Washington State House Democrat Pramila Jayapal.
I'm going to reclaim my time because I asked you a specific question that I would like you to answer, which is, will you turn to the survivors. This is not about anybody that came before you. It is about you taking responsibility for your Department of Justice and the harm that it has done to the survivors who are standing right behind you and are waiting for you to turn to them and apologize for what your Department of Justice has done.
Members get to ask the questions. The witness gets to answer in the way they want to answer. The Attorney General can
That's
respond.
not accurate, Mr. Chairman.
Because she doesn't
It is
like the
my
answer.
time.
So,
Mr. Chairman,
why
I have asked
didn't
a
she ask
question.
Merrick Garland this?
I am
twice
reclaiming
when he
my
sat in
time,
chair?
and when I
will
reclaim my
continue to
time,
answer.
it is
Mr. Chairman, the gentlelady has reclaimed
I'm
her
not going
time.
to get in the gutter for her theatrics.
The time belongs to the time belongs to the gentlelady. The gentlelady has 17 seconds.
Wouldn't apologize. Why didn't you ask Merrick Garland to apologize? I think I have some good news. I'm pretty certain Pam Bondi doesn't have children. So there's that, because God help her spawn. But let me double check, but I'm pretty certain, thank God, she doesn't have children. Wouldn't apologize to the Epstein victims, because that would be getting into the gutter for theatrics. This is the rhetorical pivot. Why are you blaming me when you didn't blame Merrick Garland? Because he's not the Attorney General. You're a hypocrite. That's what they say. Or you have Trump derangement syndrome. Or you're a failed politician. That's what she said. It's precisely why you cannot argue with a fascist. You can't question a fascist. You just have to arrest them and defeat them at the ballot box. Maryland House Democrat Jamie Raskin, again, ranking member on the Judiciary Committee. And if the Democrats take back the House, he will be chairman of the House Judiciary Committee. He repeatedly accused Bondi of siding with the sex traffickers while ignoring the victims. Quote, "You're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims." 1,000 victims that we know of. I want you to watch this. I should have played this earlier. This is remarkable. I want you to pay attention to the pause between Congressman Jamie Raskin's question and Pam Bondi's answer. Despicable. If there's a word to describe Pam Bondi, it's despicable. On the last show, I said if there's a word to describe Howard Lutnick, it's oleaginous. Pam Bondi is despicable. If you have any doubt that Pam Bondi is despicable, watch this.
You're in law enforcement. We've seen all kinds of evidence of crimes. And when we go over to the Department of Justice for the 4 computers for every member of Congress, we see more evidence of crimes. Will you create a joint task force of the Department of Justice and governors and state attorney generals and district attorneys across the country to investigate the crimes that have taken place against these victims and more than 1,000 like them? The DOJ is not doing its job. Will you create a task force with state and local law enforcement to make that happen?
Gentlelady can respond if she wants to.
Thank you, Chairman. He called Chase Mulligan a wild goose chase and didn't even know who he was. He is a defendant in your own district who preyed on girls.
Mr. Chairman.
Well, you know what? If he were part of the Epstein investigation, you wouldn't do anything about it.
Online chat rooms and committed sextortion. Yet he didn't even know in your tiny little district who he
Mr. Chairman,
was.
she's embarrassing you.
He's about to be
This is your committee, and she is embarrassing you.
Shame on you.
She is embarrassing you, Jim Jordan. I don't think Jim Jordan can be embarrassed. That's him as a high school wrestler. I don't think you can embarrass Jim Jordan. What is this? Jim Jordan, what is this? This is from the Ohio Capitol. This again? How many shows have I done on Jim Jordan? That's Strauss, when he was the wrestling coach at, Ohio State University. Jim Jordan shared a locker with Strauss, and when people allegedly told Jim Jordan, Strauss is touching us and touching himself in the shower. And Jim Jordan said, that's Strauss. That's Strauss. What is this? Ohio Capitol Journal, a new documentary. This is from last year. Former Ohio State wrestlers say U.S. Representative Jim Jordan knew about Strauss abuse, who was a prodigious abuser. He was up there with Epstein. Strauss, hundreds of boys and men. And Jim Jordan shared his locker was right next to Strauss. Didn't know it. Didn't know it. Didn't know it. You all know that story. You all know that story. Can't embarrass. What is this? Oh, okay. We've been through this. But let's just revisit this. Think about this. This is Jim Jordan attended Capital University in Columbus, Ohio. He never sat for the bar exam to become a licensed attorney. That's his story. I say he failed the bar. Who goes to law school and doesn't take the bar exam? Who becomes chairman of the House Judiciary Committee unable to pass the bar? Jim Jordan. Okay. All right. Well, Pam Bondi wouldn't answer any questions. You watch this, it's just authoritarian. It's disrespect of the legislative branch. You don't, there's no oversight. I don't care what the Constitution says. You're not entitled to ask me any questions. I ask you questions. This is how democracies die. She wouldn't ask any questions. She disrespected not just the members of the House Judiciary Committee, she disrespected the Constitution. She disrespected the constitutional mandate for Congress to perform oversight on the Justice Department. I think the budget for the Justice Department is like $50-60 billion. Congress controls the purse strings. They're entitled to know how your money is being spent. So here is Jim Jordan responding to complaints that Bondi is not being cooperative.
Time of the gentleman has expired. I would remind the committee that last Congress, Secretary Mayorkas was here numerous times, and he wouldn't answer our questions, even when we sent them to him ahead of time in writing. So that's what we've had to deal with. I think the Attorney General is doing just fine.
Yeah, if you're Jim Jordan, he's talking about Alejandro Mayorkas, who had Kristi Noem's job. He ended up getting impeached. He wasn't thrown out, though. Jamie Raskin, once again, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy. You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. More from Jamie Raskin.
Now, you're not showing a lot of interest in the victims, Madam Attorney General, whether it's Epstein's human trafficking ring or the homicidal governmental violence against citizens in Minneapolis. As Attorney General, you're siding with the perpetrators and you're ignoring the victims. That will be your legacy unless you act quickly to change course.
Here is more of Jamie Raskin.
You're running a massive Epstein cover-up right out of the Department of Justice. You've been ordered by subpoena and by Congress to turn over 6 million documents, photographs, and videos in the Epstein files, but you've turned over only 3 million. You say you're not turning over the other 3 million because they're somehow duplicative, but we know that there are actual memos of victim statements in there. And you also took down the Department of Justice's prosecution memo from 2019. So it's clearly not all duplicative, but even if it were, why not release it? Just release all the duplicative stuff.
Here is Jamie Raskin spelling out exactly how Pam Bondi is violating the Epstein Transparency Act.
In the half you did produce, you redacted the names of abusers, enablers, accomplices, and co-conspirators, apparently to spare them embarrassment and disgrace, which is the exact opposite of what the law ordered you to do.
Gets worse. Here's ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jamie Raskin.
Even worse, you shockingly failed to redact many of the victims' names, which is what you were ordered to do by Congress. Some of the victims had come forward publicly, but many had not. Many had kept their torment private, even from family and friends. But you published their names, their identities, their images on thousands of pages for the world to see.
I'm going to get to that in a second. How horrible and careless it was to not redact the names of the victims. It's breathtakingly horrible. They took special care to make sure the co-conspirators, the rich and powerful men's names, were all redacted. They couldn't care less about the victims. You're going to see something in about 2 minutes that is just heartbreaking. More from Jamie Raskin.
So you ignored the law, and even with over 100,000 employees at your disposal, you acted with some mixture of staggering incompetence, cold indifference, and jaded cruelty towards more than 1,000 victims raped, abused, and trafficked.
Jamie Raskin.
This performance screams cover-up. Convicted sex trafficker and groomer Ghislaine Maxwell opened the gates of hell to Virginia Giuffre and hundreds of other victims, as Virginia recorded in her remarkable book, Nobody's Girl. But when Maxwell was subpoenaed to come testify before Congress, you and Todd Blanche quickly moved her from a higher security prison to a minimum security camp in Texas, where she's enjoyed 5-star treatment, including catered meals, private gym time, and access to a therapy puppy. All because Todd Blanche, who's utterly failed to investigate the monstrous crimes of Epstein and Maxwell's co-conspirators, spent 9 hours with Maxwell and satisfied himself that she would have nothing untoward to say about Donald Trump, which is your only real interest in the matter, based on institutional performance.
So, one of the few questions, in fact, I think the only question Pam Bondi answered was in order to throw Todd Blanche, the Deputy Attorney General, under the bus. She did answer on Wednesday the question about Ghislaine Maxwell being transferred to a minimum security prison. Bondi said that was wrong, and she said she had nothing to do with that decision, but she had a lie. She said Maxwell isn't being held in a minimum security prison. She couldn't bring herself to do something 100% right. She said, I didn't think that was right. I didn't have anything to do with it. That was Todd Blanche. I'm doing something morally correct. It's not a minimum security prison. You're not mad at me, Satan? Okay. That's what how she thinks. Here is Jamie Raskin talking about how Pam Bondi has destroyed the Justice Department. When you talk to people who know this stuff, she is the single worst Attorney General. People tell me she is the most corrupt Attorney General, possibly in American history, certainly worse than John Mitchell, who went to prison. He was Nixon's Attorney General. I mean, John Mitchell was Ramsey Clark compared to Pam Bondi.
You replace real prosecutors with counterfeit stooges who robotically do the president's bidding. Nothing in American history comes close to this complete corruption of the justice function and contamination of federal law enforcement.
Okay, so I should wrap it up. This is a hard show for me to do because I never know how much material I have until the show starts, and then I end up going way too long. I should stop, but all right, let me keep going. This is the mop-up, by the way. I'm David Feldman in New York City. Thank you for listening and watching. Please subscribe to this show, this channel. Hit the notification bell. I don't know what the notification bell actually is, but I keep irregular hours. I don't have a steady schedule because the show, I do this all by myself. So all of it. And I do all my fact checking all by myself. And I just don't know when the show is going to be ready. I wish I had a time where I could say, watch me every day. I can't do it. So if I were a bigger show, I might be able to hire people, but I can't. So please hit the notification bell. That way I'm told you'll know when a show is up. And subscribe to the channel, subscribe to my newsletter. If you hit the like button, that keeps you in my feed. I know all of you are telling me you can't find my show. It's there. Just type my name in David Feldman in the search, and you'll find it. And share it. Help out. Tell people about this show. I wish, again, I could tell you every day at 5 p.m. If you're going to do a comprehensive look at the news, you got to do it when it's ready. So I think this is pretty comprehensive. All right. Kentucky House Republican Thomas Massie, Republican, serves on the House Judiciary Committee, and he was the only Republican willing to take on Bondi Wednesday. She called him a failed politician. Massie, along with California House Democrat Ro Khanna, wrote the Epstein Transparency Act, and both men are threatening to file a motion to impeach Bondi and hold her in contempt of Congress because she is violating the Epstein Transparency Act. So none of us would be reading the Epstein files if it weren't for Ro Khanna and Thomas Massie. Now, I'm not calling them the Epstein files. I call them the pedo files. And I want to know, has anyone come up with that? I came up with that this morning, the pedo files. I think somebody must have come up with the pedo files instead of the Epstein files. Let me know in the comments section. So I Googled the pedophiles to see if there, is that another term for the Epstein files? And it came up empty. I don't believe it. I don't believe that somebody hasn't already come up with calling the Epstein files the pedophiles. But you know what? Maybe it's not as clever as I think it is. But has anybody? I can't believe The Daily Show hasn't done this. But so let me know. Well, one of the pedophile is Howard Lutnick, our Commerce Secretary. He's got his own pedophile. Thomas Massie has called for Lutnick's resignation. Thomas Massie said Lutnick should make life easier on the president, frankly, and just resign. I played this on the last show, but this is ASMR for me. Here is Howard Lutnick last year insisting he broke off all relations with Jeffrey Epstein in 2005.
My wife and I decided that I will never be in the room with that disgusting person ever again. Oh, so I was never in the room with him socially, for business, or even philanthropy. If that guy was there, I wasn't going because he's gross.
Okay, so I'm obsessed with Howard Lutnick. I live in New York. Howard Lutnick. We now know that Lutnick was having drinks, possibly dinner, with Epstein in 2010. In 2012, he and his wife visited the island. They brought their kids. I've been over that. And then he entered into a business partnership with Epstein at the end of 2012. So to put it kindly, Howard Lutnick is a pig. And he testified before Congress on Tuesday. He is a pig. He's a worthless human being. But compared to Bondi, Saint, Mother Teresa, compared to Bondi, this pig is a saint. We played clips of his testimony on the last show. At least he answered questions. At least he admitted he misled the American people. So here is a pig testifying before the Senate on Tuesday. Here's a worthless pig who's still better than Pam Bondi. Here is Maryland Democrat Senator Chris Van Hollen Tuesday asking Lutnick about his relations with Jeffrey Epstein. Now remember, think back to all the testimony that I just played of Pam Bondi. Okay? Here is a pig, a worthless pig, Howard Lutnick, who's a better whatever life form than Pam Bondi.
Did you, in fact, make the visit to Jeffrey Epstein's private island?
I did have lunch with him as I was on a boat going across on a family vacation. My wife was with me, as were my 4 children and nannies. I had another couple they were there as well with their children, and we had lunch on the island. That is true, for an hour, and we left with all of my children, with my nannies and my wife, all together. We were on family vacation. We were not apart. To suggest there was anything untoward about that in 2012, I don't recall why we did it, but
Mr. Secretary, again, as I said, there's not an indication that you yourself engaged in any wrongdoing with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the fact that you believe that you misled the country and the Congress based on your earlier statements, suggesting that you'd cut off all contact when, in fact, you had not. When you visited the private island, did you see anything inappropriate during that visit?
the only thing I saw with my wife and my children and the other couple and their children was staff who worked for Mr. Epstein on that island.
And you realize that, you know, this visit took place after he'd been convicted, right? I mean, you made a very big point of saying that you sensed that this was a bad person in 2005. And then, of course, in 2008, he was convicted of soliciting prostitution of a minor. And yet you went and had this trip and other interactions. Did you have a dinner in Epstein's New York City home in 2011?
No.
So the information that suggests that there was a dinner with Woody Allen and Woody Allen's spouse at the Epstein residence, that's there's nothing to that. Is that right?
I actually don't know what you're referring to. There was, look, I looked through the millions of documents for my name, just like everybody else. And what I found was there was a document that says that I had a meeting with him on in May, I think, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
Okay.
Not dinner or otherwise, for an hour at 5 o'clock.
All right. There's also a reference to the fact that Epstein had expressed an interest in meeting your nanny. Do you know whether Jeffrey Epstein ever met with your nanny?
No, I saw that. I had no idea what that was about. It had nothing to do with me.
No
as far as I
interaction
know.
with him on that?
No, as far as I know, no.
Would you, Mr. Secretary, be willing to ensure that the file is complete to share with this committee and the Congress your own records, any records you have that relate to Jeffrey Epstein?
I will surely talk about that. I hadn't thought about that. I have nothing to hide. Absolutely nothing.
So compare that to Pam. There's no burn book. There's no, you took money from Adolf Hitler's son. Why are you at, none of that. Just, I mean, I could almost like this pig. I could almost like this pig. His judgment, I call into question. Who takes their young children to Pedo Island? I wouldn't even let my kids meet Tony Danza. There was an opportunity for my kids to meet Tony Danza. I didn't think it was appropriate. He's a boxer. I don't think that's appropriate. He takes his kids to Pedo Island. Okay. Here is Thomas. Should I keep going? Anybody still here? Okay. Here is. I like Tony Danza. I just don't think, people who are amateur boxers, I don't know what I'm talking about. I just picked the name Tony Danza. It could have been anybody. Here is Thomas Massie, co-author of the Epstein Transparency Act. He was on CNN after Lutnick's testimony. He was asked, do you still think Lutnick should step down?
It solidified my decision. Look, the problem isn't that he went to Epstein Island. That's not a crime. It's not appropriate, I would say, to take your family to an island where people knew that bad things were happening. The problem is, how do you have confidence in the Secretary of Commerce who lied about it just recently? Like that podcast wasn't that long ago. He lied about it recently, and then he was forced only when he was sworn in to give a truthful answer. And I think it's a matter of confidence in the people who are leading this country. And I don't have confidence in somebody who will lie like that.
I mean, if he's willing to lie about Jeffrey Epstein as Commerce Secretary, he could end up telling us that tariffs are paid for by foreign countries. I mean, where does it stop? I mean, he wouldn't do that. Howard Lutnick wouldn't say that vaccines are unsafe. Oh, he has. He's an anti-vaxxer. The worst of the worst. These are the worst people in the world. Well, there's more dirt on Mr. Lutnick. As you know, every Monday, not every Monday, on Monday, members of Congress were allowed into a room inside the Justice Department to pore over the Epstein files. They brought their Kleenex and handkerchiefs and started looking. But Thomas Massie is a serious guy, and he has a bombshell, a legitimate bombshell, that he found about Mr. Lutnick.
Well, I saw that Lutnick shared his phone number with Epstein and that their assistants were setting up phone calls between them. So there is at least that other connection.
So Speaker Mike Johnson was asked after Lutnick's testimony whether he thinks Lutnick should resign, and Johnson said, "Of course not. It's absurd." Johnson added, quote, "Howard Lutnick is a great Commerce Secretary. He's done an extraordinary job for the country." What? What has he done for the country? Appearing on CNN, Thomas Massie, co-author of the Epstein Transparency Act, was asked about Speaker Johnson's effusive praise for Lutnick.
The Speaker has to do what Donald Trump wants. The Speaker right now, I think we're stalled on a vote in the House because he can't get the bill passed and he can't afford to lose any political capital. So what he's decided to do, instead of siding with the American people or siding with our Republican conference, he's siding with Donald Trump and basically doing whatever Donald Trump wants him to do over here.
Congress rebelled on, I think it was Wednesday. Johnson wanted to make it impossible for Congress to revoke any of Trump's tariffs, and that vote got rejected. Again, Vermont House Democrat Rebecca Balint wanted some answers about Howard Lutnick. So she asked Attorney General Pam Bondi some reasonable questions.
By 2008, we knew that Epstein was a convicted sexual abuser. And we now know that Lutnick went to Epstein's Island in 2012. How was that not a deal breaker for the president? And why aren't you asking questions of the Commerce Secretary about what he saw when he was at the island, which he lied about not ever going to? The American people have a right to know the answers to this. These are senior officials in the Trump administration. This is not a game, Secretary.
I'm Attorney General.
My apologies, I couldn't tell.
No burn book. She did that all by herself. She didn't have to look down. What a burn. What a cut. Donald Trump has diapers around his butt. Hey, subscribe to the show. Please, this is a very smart show. I'm very intelligent. So, Jesus. All right. Thomas Massie, and I agree, says this is bigger than Watergate. It is. I didn't follow the Epstein files the way I should have. This is worldwide, and it's bringing down people. It comes very close to bringing down Keir Starmer. I think he's going to survive it. I don't know if Andrew's going to survive it. Thomas Massie said this cover-up spans decades, and he said to Pam Bondi, "You're part of it." Here is more from Thomas Massie on CNN. As I said, starting on Monday, members of Congress were allowed inside the Justice Department to view supposedly unredacted Epstein files. But here is Thomas Massie on CNN complaining about how Pam Bondi has not made it convenient for congressional oversight.
It's a room with 4 computers, and it's busy all the time. There's always at least 4 congressmen in there.
So Massie and Ro Khanna wrote the Epstein Transparency Act. It is a law. Bondi and the rest of the Justice Department are not allowed to decide what they're going to obey in the law and what they're not going to obey. There's no discretion here. You have to turn over the Epstein files to Congress with almost zero redactions to protect the victims. That's it. He is now claiming, Massie is saying, these are not clerical errors that we're seeing in the Epstein files. He's saying this is a blatant disregard for the law, which, by the way, was passed by unanimous consent in the Senate, meaning 100 senators voted yes on it. It passed with only 1 no vote in the House, Clay Higgins. That brilliant mind, Clay Higgins. Here is Thomas Massie complaining about all the redactions.
Main complaint that I hear as we search through these files is that when you unredact some of the files, you encounter more redactions. And then when we ask the DOJ, why are these files redacted? Why can't we remove the redactions? The DOJ says, well, that's the form in which we received the files. Now, here's the problem with that, Caitlin. The legislation that Ro Khanna and I wrote directs the Attorney General to produce the documents, but they have to give all the documents that are in the possession, not of the DOJ, but also of the FBI and also of the U.S. attorneys. So what's happened, it seems, is that the U.S. attorneys and or the FBI have redacted documents, given them to the DOJ, and then the DOJ hasn't done their diligence to go get the original documents.
Okay, so Massie, only Republican, Wednesday, putting Bondi through the wood chipper. He wanted to know how it was possible that Bondi was very careful in making certain Epstein's co-conspirators' names were all redacted, especially Leslie Wexner's, but the victims were not. He pointed to a memo advising the Justice Department to make sure the following names of victims are redacted. But instead, all the names were released unredacted.
Mr. Chairman, behind me I have 3 documents from the DOJ production that are emblematic of the massive failure of the DOJ to comply with the Epstein Files Transparency Act. To my right is an email that was sent by the victims' lawyers to the DOJ. It was a list of names not to release. What did the DOJ do with this email? They released this email in the document production. Literally the worst thing you could do to the survivors, you did. And they're getting phone calls. A lot of these people didn't want to be known. And we know you touched the document. Because you redacted one name and you redacted the lawyer's name, but you left the survivor's name there.
Unbelievable. They redacted the lawyer's name representing the victims, but they didn't redact the victim's name. So is that on purpose? Is that carelessness? Or this is the Trump White House where you punish the victims to silence them? He wanted to know, how is it possible that Pam Bondi was making certain Epstein's co-conspirators were protected? The lawyer for the victims was redacted, but not the victims. Massey wanted to know, are you able to track who in the Department of Justice made this massive failure and released the victims' names? It is actionable. Who in the Justice Department screwed up this way? A lot of these victims have family. They want it private. They don't want to be known as victims or survivors. Maybe they don't want sympathy. It was forced on them. Forced on them. Okay, more from Thomas Massey.
The title of this one is Child Sex Trafficking, Co-Conspirators, fully redacted. And by the way, I'm going to unredact them here. Les Wexner is in this. Now, your your deputy attorney general said, oh, well, he appears hundreds of times in the files, but he doesn't appear in this file until I forced you to release it, where he's listed as a co-conspirator, not to tax evasion, but to child sex trafficking, not to prostitution, not to money laundering, child sex trafficking.
Okay, so I'm going to play you an exchange with Pam Bondi. It's important to remember this. Les Wexner, I think he was one of the big investors in Victoria's Secret. I think an early investor in Abercrombie and Fitch. I'm not sure, but a lot of people think that Epstein's fortune came from ripping off Les Wexner and having stuff on Les Wexner, who I think is in his late 80s, early 90s, and there are emails where Epstein talked about doing gang stuff with Les Wexner. So there may have been, people say, allegedly, that Les Wexner was being blackmailed. Les Wexner was being blackmailed by Epstein. Epstein ended up with Wexner's property. So it's a bizarre relationship. And Wexner is all over the Epstein files. And the point Massey is making is a lot of people are all over the Epstein files. The big redaction was the list of unindicted co-conspirators. After Epstein died, there was an internal memo written over the Department of Justice. This is 2019. Bill Barr is the Attorney General. Trump is president. And this internal memo said, now that Epstein's dead, we're going to go after Ghislaine Maxwell, but they're co-conspirators. There are other sex traffickers who we could go after. Ghislaine Maxwell says 25 co-conspirators made sweetheart deals with the Justice Department in 2019, early 2020, and only she got prosecuted. So while Les Wexner's name is all over the Epstein files, what Massey discovered was Wexner was a co-conspirator, or at least he was going to be prosecuted as a co-conspirator, but seems to have made a sweetheart deal. And what Pam Bondi does, because she's a pathological liar, is she trivializes this one redaction. But it's the big redaction. It's the redaction that they're hiding that Les Wexner was a co-conspirator. Steve Bannon's all over the Epstein files. Noam Chomsky is all over the Epstein files. Alan Dershowitz. But they're not listed as co-conspirators, as sex traffickers. And this is something that Bondi kept hidden. And this is what's pissing, and rightfully so, Thomas Massie. And just so watch how she trivializes this. It's one redaction. It's just one redaction. It's the big redaction. Here we go.
And then finally, what we have here, is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need, that you're holding on to.
Okay, so I want to play you one more clip, and then I'll get to the question about the redactions. But here's one more clip.
And then finally, what we have here is the third exhibit that I have is emblematic of the FD 302 release. These are the documents that we need, that you're holding on to and over-redacting because they have the names of the men who are implicated. How do we know? Because the survivors gave testimony to the FBI, and it's in there. And what happens when you go to the portal at the DOJ to look at what's behind this redaction? Another redaction. So we can't even see them. And then there's some of these files you've pulled down from the website that we will never see because we can't search the redactions.
So it's in violation of the Epstein Transparency Act. Okay, so he asks Pam Bondi a question about Les Wexner being a co-conspirator and why he had to be the one who found out. Thomas Massie was the one who unredacted it.
I have several questions for you. Who's responsible? Are you able to track who in your organization made this massive failure and released the victims' names? Are you able to track who it was that obscured Les Wexner's name as a co-conspirator in an FBI document? Do you have that kind of accountability?
A reasonable question, don't you think? Here's the exchange.
I believe Wexner's name was listed more than 4,000 times.
Yeah, I already told you that. This is where he's listed as a co-conspirator.
Can I finish my answer? Come on, let me finish my answer. We corrected that within 40 minutes. He was already, you're acting like everybody's trying to cover up Wexner's name.
Reclaiming my time.
I'm going to answer this question.
Reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman.
This is how this works.
Can I have my time back?
Mr. Chairman. The gentlelady can give her answer.
Let's continue. So here is Thomas Massie putting the Epstein Transparency Act up on the screen for her to read, to show that she's violating the Epstein Transparency Act.
Within 40 minutes, you asked me a question. Within 40 minutes, Wexner's name was added back.
Within 40 minutes of me catching you red-handed.
There was one redaction out of over 4,700, and we invited you in. This guy has Trump derangement syndrome. He needs to get, you're a failed politician.
The one redaction was covering up that Les Wexner was a co-conspirator, or at least the Justice Department wanted to prosecute him at one time as a co-conspirator. That was the big redaction. You have Trump derangement syndrome. You're a failed politician. You know, when you talk to people that way, it belies the self-loathing inside of you. When you disrespect somebody like Thomas Massie or Jamie Raskin or Pramila Jayapal, it shows that you're really afraid of them. I know that because I sometimes do that. I don't do it anymore, but when I was younger and, you know, filled with self-loathing, but that's human nature. When somebody behaves the way Pam Bondi does, it reveals so much self-doubt. When you're stupid, inept, incompetent, immoral, you lash out at people because it makes you angry that they're inferior. Well, Jamie Raskin, who's not inferior, said Pam Bondi's responses are part of a massive cover-up. What do you think? I got this story wrong. I said from the start, anything that hurts Trump, I'm for. I don't think the Epstein files are going to bring him down. I said it might bring him down politically, but he's never going to jail. Nobody's going to be. I may have gotten some of this wrong. I think this story is big because it's not complicated. It's about something everybody can understand, and it's one of the worst crimes imaginable, if not the worst. I'm David Feldman, reminding you to stay strong and protect the weak. Thank you for listening to me. Please like this episode so I remain in your feed, and hit the notification bell because I can't keep regular hours. If this show were bigger and I could hire people, maybe I could say 2 o'clock every afternoon. I don't know. But so you got to work with me, folks. I don't know when. I want to do another show tomorrow, but I have to fact check. If I got anything wrong, please leave a comment. I make corrections on the show. So I don't think I got anything wrong on the last show. So, okay. I guess that covers it. Thank you to Bob and Mila in the chat room for keeping the conversation civil. I don't know. I'm supposed to tell you do whatever other people ask you to do for them, do it for me. Goodbye.